Illinois and Florida, and has been a clinical therapist for nearly 20 years. She is the director of the Center for Dynamic Healing, where she integrates neuroscience, mindfulness, and meditation, and it led her to specialize in brain spotting. She's also an independent love and logic parenting facilitator and parent coach, and she provides tools to cultivate the harmony and joy of family life. For today's training, we also do offer Spanish language interpretation. The Spanish channel is available by clicking on the interpretation button on the bottom of the screen. And we will have a break about halfway through at around 10 a.m. We'll have CEUs available, and we'll place the link in the chat once we get started. And with that, I'll turn things over to Lynn.
Good morning, everyone. So glad to be here with you again. This month, we are going from parenting to brain spotting. So I am so excited to share with you. I'm going to go ahead and start my PowerPoint. We have a lot of information to cover. And it's always nice to have a visual feel for that. So I'm going to pull that up, start it up. Come on, there we go. All right. So we are talking about brain spotting, and brain spotting is a focused mindfulness tool for healing. And we'll talk about, and you'll learn about what that means as we go. I would just want to share a little bit about my brain spotting journey. I received a postcard in the mail from the National Association of Social Workers, Chicago chapter, in 2016. It probably came in December of 2015, actually, and it sat on my desk for weeks at a time. And the person who was my supervisor, while I was getting my license, and I would still meet once a month, and he said, if you have any CEUs you'd like to go to, let me know. We'll go together. It's more fun to do it with somebody than it is on my own. So I saw this brain spotting thing. I'm like, oh, there's another weird therapist thing that's out there, but it had the word mindfulness in it, and mindfulness was my gig. So I thought, well, I'll learn something about mindfulness, if nothing else. 3 credits, it's free. Maybe that's why some of you are here today. So I feel that. And I'm like, yeah, let's do it. So it was on a Friday. It was a long drive on an early morning for me. And, so I'm listening, and I had been reading for pleasure, if you can believe that, like these neuroscience books, like one by Louis Cozolino, the neuroscience of therapy or something, psychotherapy, something like that. And I loved it. And it was like so exciting because I feel like my background and my foundation before I was a therapist was more spiritual counseling. And so when I was learning about the neuroscience, it just felt like, the neuroscience is the material side of the healing work that goes on. And then if you're a little bit on the woo-woo side, it's just an extension of that. It's all the same. Anyway, so I had this like mindfulness, neuroscience rhythm going in the first place. So I listened to this information on brain spotting. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is exactly what I've been reading and resonating with. And then they did the demo, and my jaw dropped to the floor. This person was processing and looking within herself. The volunteer was looking within herself and, coming up with all these insights. And the therapist really wasn't doing a ton of things, but the client, the volunteer, was coming up with all this information. And I'm like, this is what I try to get my clients to do when I say, hey, go home and journal this, and it'll help bring things up. And here this woman was sitting there staring at a old-fashioned extendable teacher pointer like this one, and she was having all these insights that I want my clients to have. And so 2 weeks later, I was at my first brain spotting training, And 2 months after that, I went to my second one. By the end of the year, I was on the board of directors for the Midwest Brainspotting Institute. And a year after that, I think I was certified. And a year after that, I became a Brainspotting consultant. So since 2016, I have been in with both feet. I have, I'm of course have to get CEUs like you do. So I've looked at all sorts of other modalities that we have a lot of things coming out right now that are under that mind body processing umbrella. And I still love Brainspotting the best. Just my preference. We'll talk a little bit more later that how Brainspotting can actually be used with any other modality that's out there. It's just a tool. It doesn't work for everything, but it can fit into other tools that you might already have that feel good to you and that you really, really enjoy. So also, speaking of volunteer, during the second half of our time together today, I would like to be able to demonstrate a brain spotting session, but I can't do that by myself. So I would love if any of you courageous souls feel like putting yourself out there and being my volunteer to be brain spotted. This isn't therapy. We're just going to do something that is, on a scale of 1 to 10, a 5 or less, so that we can just get a feel for what a brain spotting session looks like, an abbreviated one, obviously. And then you as the volunteer can talk about your experience and share with other people. Because I tell my clients all the time, I can talk about brain spotting until I'm blue in the face because I love it. And I will talk about it until I'm blue in the face. And I'm happy to do that. But nothing describes brain spotting more than an actual experience of it. So if we can watch an experience of it, that's second best. So anyway, so let me know and we can talk during break about I know what I'm looking for in a volunteer. So, just if you're willing, throw it out there and we'll check in at break time. So thank you in advance. So today we are going to cover so much that is still only a sliver of what I would love to share with you about brain spotting in the short time. My CEU thing that I went to on brain spotting my first time was 3 hours. So there's a little bit more time to go into some things, but we're going to do it today. And of course, you're going to have questions, and I hope you do. I hope you have enough questions that send you to a brain spotting training. I do not get anything out of you going to a brain spotting training, except to know that there's other people out there who feel the excitement and feel the love for serving their clients in this way. And if you are not a therapist and you're here today, awesome, good for you. You're going to be able to understand and make whatever brain spotting therapist you go to make their job a lot easier because you kind of understand the process going into it. So this is for everybody. These slides I got from my trainer and brain spotting consultant, Cherie Lindbergh from Get Connected Consulting. She's based out of Wisconsin. And I've tweaked them a lot, but she still gets the credit for the foundational pieces, which she got actually from David Grand, who is the formulator of brain spotting. So we share everything. We're a big family. So we're going to talk about the components of brain spotting today. We're going to understand the 3 basic techniques of finding a brain spot: inside window, outside window, and gaze spotting. And we're going to understand some of the theories and basic practices and very basic neuroscience. Don't get afraid of brain spotting. We'll make it easy. These are some of the books that are out there that are in alignment that we use in the presentation. Yeah, I don't really refer to them a ton, but that are in alignment with this mind body. Our trauma, all of our experiences are stored in the body. The body bears the burden. The body keeps the score. I mean, those books say everything right there. So anyway, we've got our basic brain spotting initial book too in the upper left-hand corner. So this PowerPoint presentation will be available with the recording. So, take screenshots if you want or pictures, but you'll also be able to have access to this. So the history of brain spotting. So David Grand is the the head of the brain spotting movement. He was an EMDR master trainer, or whatever they're called. I am not trained in EMDR, so anything I say about EMDR is second or third hand from what I've learned from my clients, what I've learned from my supervisor, who was a certified brain EMDR practitioner, and from my clients. Did I say clients already? From my colleagues who are trained in EMDR. So I get all this information. EMDR has never called to me, but I send people to do EMDR all the time. So it's still, so I know it peripherally, just enough to know that I didn't want to do it. And I love brain spotting. So David had this client, and she's given permission for him to share her story. And her story is actually in his book, the foundation book of brain spotting, called Brainspotting. So David was working with this ice skater. She was I guess she was a professional ice skater. She was 16 years old, and she couldn't master this triple toe loop, which is like, I guess it sounds extremely dangerous and complicated to me, but apparently it's a kind of a basic move in figure skating. And she wasn't able to do it, or maybe that was her next step or whatever. So David Grand was working with her with EMDR, targeting the moment that her jump was off, trying to help free up whatever was keeping her stuck with that. And so he was using his finger to track across her visual field, which is a technique in EMDR. And he saw her eye wobble. And he saw that and he just stopped. And, I've heard him say that he couldn't move his hand if he wanted to. There was something pulling him to just hold his finger there. Instead of in EMDR, he would have kept it moving. So he just held it there. And for an hour and a half, she started just processing all of this information, and it just kept coming and coming and coming. Some information about her father, who was really critical of her, and and it just kept going. So David was struck by the fact that not only was there stuff that they thought they had processed come up, but also things that they'd been working together for a year, and some of the stuff that she was processing had never even come up in their sessions together. So all of this was coming up, and his mind was blown. And the next day, she went to her practice, and she called David up and was so excited because she was able to do a flawless triple loop for the first time, and she never had that problem again. So that is obviously a very impactful story. Like anything in therapy, it's not always that dramatic, but what a wonderful something to catch his attention. So he began to look for these eye anomalies or eye movements, the wobbles, the reflexes with other clients. And then he held their gaze at the point where he saw something happening in their eyes. When he saw a reflex, again, the eye wobbles just a little bit or twitches, or he would hold his finger in place directly in front of the client so that the client could maintain their gaze right at the spot on the tip of his finger. And his clients would report that their processing was deeper and more powerful than other tools that they had been using in sessions together. And most of his clients were therapists anyway, so he began teaching his clients, who were also therapists, like what he's looking for and how he's witnessing these reflexes, and teaching them to do it. So then they started doing that with their clients as well, and it just kept growing and growing and growing. So this moves us into how we find these relevant eye positions. So when I say the word brain spot, that is our eye position. It's actually on the outside. It's not on the brain. I tell my clients all the time, I do not touch your brain. Nobody's touching your brain. This is an eye position, and that's what it is. I wish they had called it something else. I will admit publicly on a recording, I do wish they had called it something else, because telling somebody I do brain spotting sounds like I'm a neurosurgeon or something. And so I don't know. I don't know what they could have called it differently, but that's my side editorial comment that matters not to what we're talking about. So there are, we call it 3 legs of brain spotting. These are 3 ways that we find eye positions with our clients. There's outside window, inside window, and gaze spotting, all using the field of vision. And we're going to go through each one of these. Before we do, though, I want to talk about what a brain spotting session looks like, because that will kind of help put into some kind of framework the rest of what we're talking about today. So when a client comes in and wants to do brain spotting, you know, we do the intake, we do all the normal therapist-y kind of stuff. And then during a session, we choose a topic. So the client comes in with a topic. Usually I will say, whatever topic is on your mind and body the most when you walk in the door is probably the best thing to work on, because even if it's not related to the thing we've been talking about for 3 sessions, it's on your mind, and wherever we go, there we are. So any kind of body response that is happening to in one area is affecting us based on the thing that we really want to be working on, because we're all contained. So we pick our topic. Then I will ask, what kind of body sensations are you noticing as you're thinking about or talking about this topic that you want to work on? And that's what we call our felt sense, that inner, you know, how am I feeling about what I'm talking about? And so the client will identify a body position, or maybe they won't identify a body position. Maybe they'll say, well, I'm just feeling really anxious. Then I will ask, where in your body is that anxiety showing up? Oh, my chest is really tight, or I feel it in my stomach, or I feel my shoulders getting clenched. There's no right or wrong answer. Every person is different. So everybody's going to present a little bit differently, but we all have the same kind of nervous system. So even if a client's responses show up differently and their story is different, their nervous system still is going to respond the way all of our nervous systems do. So we want to find where that body location of the emotion that the topic is eliciting. And then we get the SUDS level. The SUDS, I had to write this down because I always forget. Subjective units of distress scale. I don't call it a SUDS level with clients. I say, how, on a scale from 0 to 10, how strong would you say that sensation is that you're describing in your body? 0 meaning no sensation at all, 10 meaning strongest ever. How would you rate it? It's a 6 today. Okay. So then I take my old-fashioned teacher pointer. I don't know how big I am on your screen, but I'm going to gesture a lot. So make sure you can see me too while we're going through this. So then I take my pointer. I try to get it at eye position. You know, that's different when I'm online doing brain spotting. And yes, you can do brain spotting online. We have learned during the pandemic, it works very well. Or in person, and we try to get it at eye level to start. And then I just move the pointer across, and the client's eyes, their face is pointed towards mine. Their eyes are on that tip of the pointer, and they're just tracking the tip of that pointer, but their attention is on the inside. Their attention isn't on me. Their attention isn't, the pointer is really just a tracking point for the eyes. The attention is on the inside. So the eyes are following the tip of the pointer, but the attention is on that body sensation they described. And what we're looking for is, it depends on if we're doing outside window or inside window, but let's say we're going to do inside window. The client is going to feel that sensation differently as the pointer tracks along. And what we're looking for is where the client feels that tightness in their chest, for example, the strongest, you know, and along that line, they may feel it stronger anywhere, could be multiple places. It could be stronger on this side, not as strong on this side. It could be strong on the peripheries, anywhere. anything can be a brain spot, any position can be a brain spot. But what we're doing with these different ways that we're going to talk about where we find brain spots is finding the place where the eye position coordinates the most with what's happening in the body. And from there, okay, so once we go across, then we go up and down and kind of hone in that spot when the client has identified, or we have identified as the therapist on the outside, where along this x-axis we are going to stop. Then we do the y-axis. You never thought you'd use geometry in your life, did you? We go up and down, just kind of hone that in. And again, either we're looking at the client's reflexes or the client is feeling that sensation inside. And let's say this is where we find it. So I park my pointer at that brain spot, at that eye position, and the rest of the time, most of the time, is going to be the mindfulness processing. So the client's eyes will just park at the tip of that pointer, just to rest the eyes and we'll talk about the neuroscience of this later, and then just allow whatever is going on inside to come up and out. Sometimes clients talk a lot, sometimes they don't. And it doesn't matter if they're talking or they're not talking. What matters is that they're just watching and letting happen whatever is happening on the inside. And there's lots of things I can say about this, about checking in and all of that, but we don't have time. So that mindfulness processing can happen for anywhere from 5 minutes to 40 minutes. You know, I might have gone 45 minutes at some point, but usually I want to leave time for debriefing afterwards. So, so once our time is getting close, I'll have the client check in with that original topic they started with, get another SUDS level, how, 0 to 10, how is that feeling now? Maybe it's a 3. Okay, let's leave it at 3 for today and take a deep breath. I'll put my pointer down and let's talk about your experience of what happened. So that's kind of the general way we do a brain spotting session. So I just wanted to kind of give that as our foundation. We're going to come back to this as we are getting ready for our demonstration. But I just felt like it's better to kind of have the process in mind before we get to the next thing. So outside window brain spotting is the first way that David discovered to find the eye position, which is what he did with the ice skater. So the therapist is watching as we're tracking their eyes. While their eyes are following the tip of that pointer, the therapist is watching the client's eyes at first, but really we're watching facial expressions, we're watching breath, we're watching all of the body responses. Maybe the leg is shaking, maybe the hands are wringing or twitching or tapping, or, we're just watching that. And as that pointer moves across, what we're looking for as the brain spotting therapist is, where are there the most reflexes? And when we see where there are the most reflexes, then we stop at that point and we go up and down and hone that in, and then we park it. And that is basically outside window. It's we as the therapist are identifying where we're watching the most reflexes from the client as that pointer is going across. So what our theory about this is that when a brain spot is stimulated, so when we find an eye position that correlates with that body sensation, there's an involuntary unconscious reaction of the body that responds to that being touched. It's like almost like if you touch a bruise or you have a bruise, somebody touches your bruise, we react, right? So we're looking at emotional bruises when we're processing some things, essentially. So when we find that eye position, there's a response. There's a response there. All right. So that was how David first discovered brain spotting, and he thought that was it. He thought, okay, well, this is brain spotting, this outside window where I see, as the therapist, I see the eye twitch, then, or the eye wobble, the eyeball wobble. That's how we find our brain spot. But later he learned another way to do it, but this, what he originally called brain spotting is then now called outside window brain spotting, because it's the therapist on the outside of the client finding the eye position by watching the client's therapist. But he then learned that clients can identify their own brain spot or their own eye position, which he called inside window, because the client is looking on the inside, observing their body reaction as that pointer is going across their field of vision. So he calls that inside window. This is where the client is watching those internal responses and saying, oh, right there. Like I'm going across with my pointer and the client says, ooh, that feels strong. Okay, let's keep going and just kind of go across the whole field of vision, and then we can come back. Oh, yeah, there's another one. Okay, good. So we've got a couple here. And then we go all the way across, and then if there are 3 places where the client felt reactions, we'll say, okay, so which one felt the strongest? Where would you like to stop? And they'll say, well, it felt stronger on this side. So go on this side, then we'll go up and down. And the same thing, client is watching those inner sensations, and we are responding to that. And we are letting the client decide where they feel most in touch with the eye position, their topic, and their body response. The third way to find a brain spot is when natural gazing while thinking or speaking is observed and used to process. So this is basically this is all about brain spotting. Brain spotting uses the way the brain processes naturally anyway, and we just put it into this more focused incubator for the client to process. So if you've ever been just kind of spacing out, that's what gaze spotting is, right? When we're spacing out and we just feel compelled to keep our eyes there, and somebody might be talking to us on the side, hey, Lynn, da 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 da. And we might be able to answer them, but we can't pull our eyes away from wherever they're looking. That's because the mind-body system is processing something. We may not even know what the mind-body system is processing at the time, but we know it is because we have this impulse to stay. We have this compulsion to stay in that eye gaze wherever we're looking, and we can't physically turn our head, or we could pull ourselves out of it, but we don't want to because it feels good, right? And so when a client is talking, and if you're not a therapist, just notice this with people in your life. When somebody's talking, you may see that they keep looking at in a certain angle. And I don't know, there's theories out there about, oh, when people look down this way, they're lying. When they look this way, they're blah, 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 whatever. I don't want to keep track of all that, but it's out there. It's great. But what's happening is, I know when I talk, my eyes are moving all over the place, and it helps me think. It helps me think about what I want to say. And it pulls out from my brain what I want to say next. And so when we're talking, we have certain places that we're going, that our eyes go, that is correlating with whatever we're talking about. So when we're listening to somebody tell a story that might be difficult, and you see their eyes going to the same place, or maybe there's 2 or 3 places that their eyes keep going to, there's probably one place that their eyes go to that feels activating of their emotion around their story. There may be another eye position that feels more grounding and calming that their eyes are going to. We have a technique in brain spotting we call resource spotting, body resource, and which we're not going to cover today, unfortunately, but that's another way to more grounding way to process something. But with gaze spotting, what we're doing is we're not using the pointer. We're just watching the client and saying, hey, I noticed while you're talking, you keep looking up there. 99% of the time, the client isn't aware where their eyes are going while they're talking, but we are watching and we are noticing that. And so we'll say, well, what if you just kind of put your eyes up in that direction, even if you don't know what you were looking at specifically, just put your eyes up there and keep talking. Just keep sharing what you were sharing. Don't change anything. Just park your eyes up there and keep talking. And that's another way that that we can use that eye position and the neuroscience behind it, which we'll talk about, to help a client process. So we've got inside window, outside window, and gaze spotting as the different ways we find our eye position. I mentioned this before earlier, but brain spotting is an open integrative model and can be incorporated with any other therapy technique that you like, you resonate with, you use all the time. Internal family system, we can brain spot apart, we can do all sorts of things. So it works really well. I have a brain spotting consultation group that I lead once a month, and we have a couple of somatic experiencing therapists in there that love their brain spotting technique and incorporating that into their other techniques that they've learned. So, and I love David Grand is such a wonderful person. He's just such a good person. And I remember him saying one time at a training, he said, don't get arrogant about brain spotting because we are going to keep up with the neuroscience. 6 months from now, brain spotting can be completely different. We have to throw it out the window because we're learning more about the brain all the time. And so don't get attached to what it looks like. And he also says, there's no turf when it comes to healing. So it's not like, oh, brain spotting is better than EMDR or somatic experiencing. It's like we're here to help our clients. And, the more we can support each other in doing that, the better, because that's what we're doing. That's what we came in to do, not to have a thing that is our thing. Not that that's not okay too, but just that it all works together, right? We just want our clients to feel better. So, all right. So Brainspotting's tagline, one of them, is where you look affects how you feel. So when we're talking about eye position, and we were talking about how that pointer goes across the screen and our clients or we may feel something different every time. I'm going to actually stop sharing my screen for a minute. I don't know if you can pin me to your screen so that I'm the only one you can see. But what we're going to do is just a little bit of a group activity. I would like for you to think of a topic right now that's on your mind that is on that scale from 0 to 10. Maybe it's a 5 or less, 3 to 5, let's say. So enough activation where you can feel something in your body, but not too much that you need to go call your therapist, because I want you to stay here and listen to the neuroscience part at least. So anyway, so I want you to just close your eyes and just think of a topic that pulls something up for you. And when you have that in mind, I want you to notice what kind of body sensations are going along with that topic. Notice head to toe, where is it showing up the most? Even if it seems to not make sense, everything makes sense in brain spotting because we're just learning to listen to that body and what it's saying. And then measure that 0 to 10. How strong is that for you? Hopefully it's 0 to 5. Now I'm going to put the pointer on my screen over here, and I want you to look, let your eyes be on the tip of that pointer. And just notice, keep your face pointed towards your screen, and just your eyes are moving to the side to look at that pointer and just notice the sensations there. And then in the middle, just notice the sensations. Have they changed? Are they the same? If it was a 3, what is it now? And I'm going to put that pointer over here. Just see how those sensations feel differently there. And using your hand reaction on the screen, how many of you felt a difference in those different locations? Okay. This is just a quick thing, so if you didn't, don't worry about it. If we were in a brain spotting session, it would be my job to help you identify your eye position. But just to give you a little sense of it, that where we look does affect how we feel about whatever it is that's going on in our mind or as we're speaking. And brain spotting utilizes that natural process as part of how we find that eye position to support our clients with. So, okay, so I'm going to go back to sharing my screen. Thank you for your input. Okay. Okay, there we go. All right. So we're moving forward here. So now we're going to talk about brain spotting theory, and we're going to get into a little bit of the neuroscience. First of all, what is a brain spot? When we're looking at the brain and the neuroscience behind brain spotting, what we call a brain spot is that eye position where the subcortical brain or the unconscious part of the brain, not the part we are aware of, is reacting to that eye position, to where the pointer is. And what we have theorized in brain spotting in our practice, we understand and we're hypothesizing, right? But in practice, we know that the eye position is bypassing the neocortex, or that conscious part of the brain, to access the limbic system and the brain stem. And it's giving us feedback that the conscious mind isn't always aware of. That ice skater did not know her eye was wobbling. You know, our bodies respond whether we want them to or not. So this is part of that, you know, the different parts of the brain. So we see on the right-hand side, I'm sure most of you know this model. This is called the triune brain, and the brown section is the you know, all the involuntary organs doing their own thing without us our food digests without us having to think about it, our heart pumps without us having to think about it, and so forth. And then the middle section is the limbic system. It's our emotional body. It's our fear center. It's our reaction center, our fight, flight, or freeze center, also connected to that automatic part of the reptilian brain, that involuntary part of the brain. And then the blue part is the neocortex. That's largely what makes us human: our thinking, our logic, our ability to see past and future, and to think about past and future versus just the present, and language and all of that, and our rational mind. And we are, with brain spotting, we are kind of going right through that, that neocortex. We're not totally bypassing the conscious mind, of course. It's not hypnotherapy. It's not, you know, not that hypnotherapy does either, but anyway, we're hitting that limbic system and finding that eye position based on those reflexes. So brain spotting is seen as a physiological approach using that mind-body connection, that brain-body connection, to help our psychology, to help move forward some of that psychological information that's processed, needs to be processed and stored. So brain spotting has a dual attunement frame. And dual attunement is the combination of relational attunement and that neurobiological attunement. We've just talked about the neurobiological attunement. We are attuning to the body and how it's responding to the material that we want to be working with. And also, we are using the relationship aspect, which we all, maybe not all, but I'm sure many of you, most of you have heard that the thing about therapy that works, no matter what kind of tool we're using, is a safe relationship with the therapist. It's the non-judgmental listening space that we offer our clients. And brain spotting, this is especially important with brain spotting because when a client feels safe, they heal. When we feel safe, we heal. When we feel safe, our mind body system will push up whatever needs to be worked on. So sometimes, if you've ever felt like, gosh, things were going so great, I was feeling so calm, I haven't been anxious, and then this thing comes up from the past, and it's like, what the heck, where the heck did this come from? But oftentimes when we feel the best is when our subconscious stuff comes up because our brain body system wants to heal. So in brain spotting, what we're doing is we're creating, let me go to my next, we're creating this frame for the client relationally with the relationship and with the neurobiology to tap into, oh yes, I'm touching into this thing that wants to be processed in my system, and I'm in a safe place to be able to do that. So that's what that dual attunement is. And we use this dual attunement with the mind body system and relationally to strengthen the client's window of tolerance. And that is just saying, when we feel safe, we heal. Brain spotting is also client-led versus therapist-led. Even though as the therapist, I am walking the client through the setup that we talked about a little while ago. Once the client is leading the eye position, the client is helping find the eye position, whether they're talking about their internal felt sense and through inside window, or if I'm watching their reflexes on the outside, the client is leading, whether it's their unconscious body reflexes or their conscious information they're giving me about what they're feeling inside. And so David says the client is like the head of the comet and the rest of us just follow, the therapist follows. And I even tell my clients, when I use this analogy, I tell them, really, your mind body system is the comet, and both you and I are following that comet, because when a client is in that mindfulness part of brain spotting, they are just watching and letting happen whatever their mind body system needs to process in that moment. And we are both following that, the client and the therapist, we are both following that and just being curious about it and letting come up whatever needs to come up. And I've never, when I do this presentation, a lot of therapists can get worried about flooding and all of that. And there are ways that we're taught at brain spotting trainings to do resourcing as needed. But we do the resourcing based on what the client is telling us. Does this feel like too much? I'm asking as a therapist, does this feel like too much? Do you want, there's ways we can slow that down. There's ways we can back off of it. But we as the therapist are not going to always, there are occasions when we do, but again, 99% of the time, we as the therapists are not going to make that decision for the client. We're going to check in with the client. How is this, we got our pointer right there, and the client is like, oh, there's lots of emotion coming up. Are you okay with letting that emotion come up, or would you like to back off of it a little bit? And I will do whatever my client tells me to do, but I will not decide it for them. Always. There's every now and then, very, very, very minor exceptions, I will decide that for them. But generally, they know what they can handle and what they are not able to handle. So with them, we notice what's happening with curiosity, not assuming anything on the client's part. If we have a question about something, we can ask the client in the moment, is this okay? Are you doing all right? Is there anything you need from me? But otherwise, we're just letting that mindfulness process do its thing and processing happening from the inside out. And as a therapist, brain intervention is used very minimally. Like when that mindfulness processing is going in, there's a connection, there's a connection, there's a zone that somebody gets into while they're in a brain spotting session that has a rhythm and a process of its own. And if I, as a therapist, keep jumping in and saying, "Oh yeah, well, that reminds me of that thing that you said, and don't you see the connection there?" And then I'm interrupting that flow that's happening on the inside. So during that mindfulness process, we have this thing that we say, and I've got my little bracelet on. It says, wait, W-A-I-T, why am I talking? And so as brain spotting therapists, we are trained, if there's something we want to say, because our training as therapists is to intervene and teach and give a tool and show connections and all of that. But in brain spotting, we have to turn that on its head and just go, why am I talking? Is this really going to matter? And we have our debriefing time at the end after the mindfulness processing has completed for the day, for the session. We can then say, during your session, me as a therapist, I can say, during this session, you said such and such. Did you feel that connection of that other thing that you've told, that we've talked about and, with your childhood and blah, blah, blah. We can do all that stuff in the debriefing time, but we don't want to interrupt that process while the client is processing. And clients, gosh, this is getting into some detail and we've got a lot to cover, but every client is different. Every brain spotting session is different. The eye position is never in the same spot. The body sensation is never the same spot. And I say never loosely because sometimes it is, but if we assume that it's going to be in the same, or if the client assumes, oh yeah, my brain spot is always over here, I say, let's just go across anyway, because we are following the mind-body system, not the rational mind. And our mind-body system has its own rules and it has its own authority. And the prefrontal cortex, as you'll see in a little bit, really doesn't have a lot of vote, but it thinks it has all the votes. So it's kind of fascinating. So we we just want to follow the client and be in communication before and after and during only as needed with the client to make sure that their flow is not being interrupted, but that they're not feeling like we're not there with them too. So that's all part of a training you would go through. So despite the neurobiological brain-body basis of brain spotting, it's still very highly relational. There's still a flow, like the client is being mindful during their processing time, but we as a therapist are holding that space and watching the reflexes and listening and listening, even if there's silence on the other end. I know when I am the brain spotting client, I always think I know how my own brain spotting session is going to go, and I am always wrong. I think, oh, I'm going to really cry during this one, and I don't. Or I think, oh yeah, this is not so hard. And then I end up, going somewhere I didn't even expect and crying or not crying, whatever. But what I have learned from my own brain spotting work is that if I can't predict how my own brain spotting session is going to go, I certainly can't predict somebody else's. So it's more about learning how to be there presently and engaging less than we're trained to as therapists, but really we're engaging differently. I remember Cherie at my first training, Cherie Lindbergh said, "You have no idea how burned out you are as a therapist until you try brain spotting." I'm like, no, I love my job. I never get burned out. I love doing what I do. And then I started brain spotting and I went, oh my God, this is what she was talking about, because the client is doing the work. The client's mind-body system, that process of looking inside and letting happen what happened is doing the work, not me. Didn't have to work as hard in the same ways. My work was more presence and guidance versus, giving interventions all the time. course, we still do that as therapists. Brain spotting is just a tool, but it's a different kind of tool, and it's awesome. So this is David Grand on the right, of course, and on the left is Deb Antinori. And Deb Antinori is, my name for her is the neuroscience goddess. She is a brain spotting trainer out of New York, and she does this training called The Brain for Brain Spotting Therapists. And she talks about neuroscience like she's talking about her favorite person in the world. She's fun, she's brilliant, and I just completely adore her. So I just wanted to share that because we are going on to our neuroscience, and everything I know about this I learned by watching her. Like, I heard it a million times, but she's the one who really nailed it home for me. I am terrible at remembering parts of the brain, so don't worry about this. I'm just going to give this information because it can be helpful to know there really is biological processes going on when we're healing, and brain spotting uses what we know about that in neuroscience, not all of it, but what we know about it, it uses that to help a client process something. And so brain spotting is working to move our nervous systems from being dysregulated to being regulated by processing those stuck places inside that we have carried around, that our clients have carried around forever. Okay, so this is a whole bunch of gobbledygook at the top. But basically, this green part here is our rational mind. It's our logical mind. Down here is part of that prefrontal cortex, but it's part of the prefrontal cortex that is agranular, so it's a little softer. And information and what do I want to say? We have access through this part, and this is a part we're going through in brain spotting to access the limbic system and the brainstem responses and so forth. And if you look at these arrows mean communication. So we've got the agranular isocortex talking to the ACG, talking to the amygdala, talking to whatever that pink part is, which talks to the brainstem. And we've got all these different places down here talking. Look who's talking. Look how many people are talking to that rational mind. One. There's one thing that is giving the rational mind, the prefrontal cortex information, and everybody else is talking amongst themselves. So, so anyway, so hold that thought. We're going to keep talking about that. Actually, I'm going to go to this one. So, because this is really what that just said. So talk therapy is really dealing with that top layer of the brain, which is the more humanish part of the brain, the prefrontal cortex. That's what we're accessing during talk therapy. And there's study after study that shows that is, well, that's good information. It doesn't heal that mind-body storage where trauma lives. Trauma is stored deeper in the brain, our memory, our emotion, our bodies. And so brain spotting is accessing the trauma memories to heal the whole system, not just having a really good intellectual understanding of it. Okay, so let me go back here. So the part of the brain, this little blue part is called the superior colliculi. There's two of them. So this one is the superior colliculus. No test. There's no test on this. But the superior colliculi have 3 or 7 layers. The first layer is visual. The second layer is tactile. And the second layer is auditory. And the third layer is tactile. In brain spotting, we use those first 3. The bilateral sound is just recording that goes back and forth. We have headphones that we use. I'm not going to go into that. There's just not enough time. But these 3 ways that we use to help find an eye position and to help the processing during brain spotting is theorized to touch in with 3 of those 7 layers of the superior colliculi. The superior colliculi take in sensory information and figure out where to store it. in the mind-body system, the brain-body system. It's the file keeper. It says, okay, I've got all this information. I am going to put it in a file here, 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 or here. Okay. So that's all the neuroscience. I think I have a couple more brain pictures, but we're good. So again, brain spotting is based on what we currently understand about how the brain-body system experiences, stores, and processes, or not, trauma. And that's big trauma, little trauma. I remember when I was in third grade, I had my third grade teacher who I loved. I loved her. Her name was Mrs. Zook. And I had her in third grade and fourth grade. But in third grade, I had a day where I was just very talkative. I had it sitting next to a boy that I liked a lot. And I was just talking to him a lot that day. And she was very exasperated with me. And she said, Lynn, she was in a reading group, and I was at my desk talking to this boy. And she said, Lynn, you haven't been worth 2 cents today. And that was horrifying to me. And so to anybody else, that's like a very, very, very little T. How many of our kids, if you have kids, how many times has a teacher had to tell them to be quiet, right? It was not a big deal. But to me, it was like horrifying. And when I got older, I remembered that every time a teacher would call on me, or every time a teacher would look over at me, I would flinch because thought I was going to get in trouble. So it's like that kind of, even small situations like that have big impacts on our mind-body system and how we choose to behave moving forward. So these traumas, so to speak, big traumas, little traumas, chronic traumas, overwhelm the brain's ability to process, leaving these pieces of recorded unprocessed experience frozen in internal time and space in our internal mind-body system. You may have heard the phrase neurons that fire together, wire together. And I think that's oversimplified, but it's kind of, for simplicity's sake, it's true. When we experience something that shocks the system, there's a neural connection that happens there that we just have to, that wire together because it's trying to protect us, right? So my nervous system said, okay, I have to protect myself from getting in trouble with teachers for the rest of my school career, right? And so those neurons had wired together in me. And so we talk about them. Robert Scaer talks about them as capsules in the brain that have formed. Like our brains are going, okay, this was a hurtful experience. I need to learn from it and protect myself from that happening again. And then it causes stuck places in the flow of being able to live. So brain spot is seen as tapping into that capsule inside. All right, so I think we have gotten through everything. We talked about inside window, outside window, gaze spotting. I kind of skimmed over the uncertainty principle, which is basically we just don't assume we know how a client's brain spotting process is going to go, even though we have the frame, we have the skills to manage whatever comes up. We have the dual attunement frame and the brain-body-based relational therapy aspect of brain spotting and regulation, moving from dysregulation to regulation. So I can't believe we got through all of that. So we're going to take a break now. I'm going to look over questions, and anybody who volunteered, I will touch base with you. And Bianca, I'm going to turn it over to you.
And there's a question in the chat. It says, what is your experience with this technique with young children?
I can't work with young children, but there are several trainers who work with brain spotting with children and incorporate brain spotting in really an amazing way. That's a great question. With children with play therapy. And even as a child, I mean, play therapy is a whole series of brain spots for the child, right? And working with what's happening on the inside and how that's showing up on the outside in their play. Yeah, I can't speak any more to that because I don't work with kids. I worked with teenagers up. with Brainspotting. So, yeah, so great
And
question.
another
And
one,
yes,
does brain spotting assist with the treatment of ADHD or attention deficit?
it sure can. I mean, kind of it's kind of interesting. What I like using Brainspotting for with somebody with ADHD is to help them focus, to give their mind-body system an experience of focus. So instead of trying to process ADHD, it's more about resourcing and giving the client an experience of being focused and still to help their nervous system get used to it. And it takes a lot longer because I don't see ADHD as a disorder. It's just a way the brain is wired, right? And so, of course, things are going to show up, like, oh my gosh, I had ADHD. And so I always got yelled at school, or my parents were always poking at me about, on me about something. And I feel bad about myself because I'm not doing things the way everybody thinks I should be doing them, so there's a lot to be processed around ADHD. So there's that part that is the actual processing part. But then, what I really like doing is that focusing and just giving the brain spotting is a very, even though it's gentle, it's very intensive in the moment. It's very focused. And so that focused experience of just resourcing for the ADHD mind is can be very helpful.
I'll keep track of some of the questions that are coming in so we can answer them at the end. Is that okay?
Yes, yes, yes. Okay, so um so Joseph, are you still up for being my volunteer today?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, awesome. So I am going to stop sharing my screen. And if you can turn your camera on so I can see you. Maybe your camera is on and I'm not being able to see you yet.
No, it wasn't. Or it is
Okay,
now.
it is now. Okay, so let me find you in the sea of faces.
Mhm.
Sure. Let me- Ah, there you are. Okay, so I'm going to pin you to my screen here. And I'm going to pin myself. So it's just, actually, I'm just going to pin you so I can see you. Okay, awesome. So what I invite everybody else to do, first of all, Joseph, thank you for volunteering. What I would like everybody else to do is to pin Joseph to your screen, and you can pin me to your screen too. If you go up to the three little dots in the upper right-hand corner of mine and Joseph's picture, you can pin us both so you can watch us both bigger on your screen. So Joseph, you shared that you have a 3 to 5 topic that that you'd like to talk about. So we're going to go ahead. I'm going to walk us through the process. So you don't have to worry about the steps that I talked about earlier. That's my job. And we'll go ahead and get started. So what is your topic, if you want to briefly describe?
So I just kind of broadly chose stored childhood trauma.
Okay.
Um, Brain spotting seems very similar to a therapy that I did in the past where I was having a lot of the reflexes you were talking about, like the tapping, the twitching, and he kind of guided me through focusing on certain parts of the body. Like if he noticed me swallowing a lot, he would like have me focus on like try not to swallow for the next minute and like stuff like that. So anyway, so that kind of resonated, and just the topic that I was working on with him was stored trauma. And I felt like it was physically coming out of my body when I did it. So is that too broad? Would you like me to narrow it in more?
Yeah, let's narrow it in. And again, for our purposes, since we
Sure.
only have such a short time, if you have a particular memory that comes up that is in that lower range of the SUDS level, that would be a good one to start with. Because when we do brain spotting, just for educational purpose here, when we do brain spotting, We can do brain spotting on a topic like anxiety or childhood trauma, but then we're only going to get broad results. And there's so many places for the brain to go to, so many files. So we really want to start out with a specific topic experience, because then once we're in the mindfulness processing part of brain spotting, your mind body system is going to take you wherever it needs to go. So it may jump topics to something that we went, oh yeah, that's not a 3 to 5. So we'll work with that. But we want to start with that specific.
Sure. So what sticks out to me is in fourth grade, I got alopecia areata. And so like in fourth grade, it just started out with like maybe like a quarter size bald spot, but it became a constant source of like worry and anxiety, like because I had longer hair and we would just kind of cover it up. And so it was constantly like in school, in class and stuff. It was just constantly worrying, like, is the hair going to move? Is somebody going to see the bald spot? And it just became a constant anxiety and worry. And it kind of stuck with me for most of my life, really, until eventually I sort of got over it and became of age where shaving your head was cool.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you for sharing that. So as you're talking about that, what kind of body sensations are you noticing?
A little bit of tightness in the chest, a little shortness of breath, even. Um, Almost like a little bit of tightness kind of in the gut too.
Okay, and how would you measure those in general? 0 to 10, 0 meaning no sensation at all, 10 meaning strongest ever.
Um, like a 4.
Okay, all right. So we're going to find the eye position where you feel most in touch with that 4. So it
Mm,
could be in one particular body area that you described, or it could be kind of in general, but you'll know, you'll know. So I'm going to put my pointer over here and help me out with eye level. Is that pretty good for eye level? Does it need to go
I'm
up or
curious,
down?
like how close to bring the phone to my face so that like do I want my eyes to move farther? So I think like if I don't
Well,
know.
I would be comfortable, because once you're in that
Mm,
mindfulness, you want to just be able to let what's happening on the inside and not have to worry about your body comfort,
yeah.
you know. So whatever is comfortable for you. If,
Okay.
if we're in person, we've got a whole bigger field of vision, but
Right.
online, what I always thought when I first did brain spotting online, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so limited, but it really works just as well. So we don't even have to worry about that.
Okay.
All right. All right. So help me with eye level here. Is that
I'm looking like straight with like a little bit of left.
okay? Good, good, good. So I'm going to move the pointer across the screen, and you're going to just kind of notice the body sensations. Your eyes are going to follow the tip of that pointer, but your attention is on the inside.
All right there.
Okay. So we're going
Like
to keep going.
a little bit. Oh, you're gonna keep going? Okay.
Yeah, we're going to just check the whole. We'll come back to that though.
Right
Just
there.
want to. Okay, okay.
A little bit right there.
Okay, so we have there, back about here, and then over in my hair. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So which feels the strongest to you?
Um, Either all the way to the right or where your finger is right now.
Okay. Do you have a preference?
Um, Probably where your finger is right now.
Okay.
Maybe even closer, a little bit closer to your nose.
Okay.
Yeah, like right there.
Okay. So now we're gonna go all the way up and then all the way down and do the same thing.
Mm-hmm. Like right there.
Good. Good noticing.
And right there.
We have a few of them again. Do you have a preference?
Probably right there, I think is the
Okay.
strongest.
Okay, so hold that place with your eyes. I'm going to adjust my pointer so I can hold it steady. So I'm going to mess it up here for a second. Okay, so help me left, right, up or down.
You're right. Like a couple inches, a little bit more, a little bit more, like right there.
Okay, excellent. So that's good.
Yeah.
Okay, if you need me to move it or if I accidentally sway or move it out of the way, let me know.
I
But
also noticed that I feel like I'm focusing on it mainly with my left eye.
okay, good noticing.
Okay.
Good noticing. Okay, so you're just going to let your eyes rest on the tip of that pointer, but your attention is on the inside, thinking about alopecia and letting whatever is coming up on the inside to come up. And feel free to talk it out loud or to not talk at all, depending on whatever's going to help you feel like you're processing what you need to around it.
I'm definitely feeling the sensations. I have imagery of like me sitting in class, kind of like when it first started, and sort of like the fear of it and the worry of it.
Being curious about whatever's coming up.
It seems to be like focused on that one situation, like when it like first began. It must have been probably maybe like my first time like really like worrying about it. Cause like at first it was like it wasn't scary to me at first. Like there was hair falling out, but like I almost like thought it was like fun or cool. Like I would just pull some out and like throw it and I was like, "Oh my God, look at this." And like I wasn't worried about it. But then when there was like a quarter sized bald spot, then I started to feel like fear and worry. And like right now, I'm very focused on just this particular, I can remember the whole classroom. I don't really remember the people or the teacher, but it was full. And I just remember just feeling like a really intense anxiety about it.
Noticing what kind of body sensations are going along with that.
Um, it feels like fear, but like through the entire body. It's like a whole entire body sensation. And then the biggest thing I can describe it is like if you've ever felt real fear, like really scared of something, and it's like you feel it in your entire body, like your whole nervous system is reacting to it.
So, noticing. Is it okay to stay with that and just keep watching what's happening in there?
There's some like sadness starting to surface. Still feeling it like as a whole body sensation in my nervous system. Um, like almost like not really that I want to cry, but just definitely like some pretty significant sadness, and then like kind of a cramping in the gut. It's starting to kind of flutter. I think my body's trying to like run from those feelings.
Is it okay to watch the fluttering or is it feeling too much?
No, it's okay. Gut sensations getting heavier, almost even like a slight nausea. And there's kind of a tingling in the hands and wrists. I keep feeling compelled to ask you how long this is going to go for.
You can ask me that. We'll go as long as we have time for, but first and foremost, we'll go as long as you feel comfortable within that window.
I can stick through it. I think my body's just, or my brain's looking for like, when is this sensation going to end, Which is probably just part of sort of running from it.
Do you need any support as you sit with that, or are you cool with watching it?
I'm cool. I'm trying to focus on balancing it, like balancing it out and like becoming comfortable with it. I feel like there's even like some muscle soreness happening, like in my hands and wrists and forearms.
Wonderful. You want to put your attention on your hands and wrists and forearms and just see what shows up. You can do that too.
Okay. It made the sensations more intense, and I feel like I could feel like the top left side of my brain, if that makes any sense whatsoever.
Everything's connected, so it's all part of the process.
Like right up here, like I feel like I could actually feel it. My brain keeps asking over and over inside my head, like, when is it gonna end? When is it gonna end? When is it gonna end?
Mhm. Listen, would you like to transition out of our brain spotting time? Or you want to
Kinda.
stick with it a few more minutes? You kind of want to, okay,
Yeah.
awesome. So I invite you to just check in with those sensations that we started with and just kind of check into that memory that was what we started with also and see what you notice from that.
It's like a lot of discomfort in the body, which is probably a lot of what I was feeling at that time, I would assume.
Sure, sure.
It just feels like discomfort, like in the whole body. Like I just wanna just move away from it, like get my mind elsewhere, like get my mind somewhere completely different to like get away from it.
Mhm. Can you picture yourself putting that whole experience and what's coming up about it now on the shelf to the side, or letting it drain out your body into the floor, into the earth? When you feel ready, take a deep breath or two. Blink your eyes. I'm going to put the pointer down.
That's good. That feels better.
Good, good.
Like,
Thank you. Thanks for sharing all of that.
like there was
Yeah,
relief when you put the pointer away.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, it seems like there's some more to do and work with, and everything you were describing was so um, so understandable, and such a good example of how our nervous system works on trying to get us away from something that was painful, and that's wonderful because that's how we survive our childhood, right? But it's also then it gets in the way when we're grown-ups and we don't have to be protecting ourselves from things that our nervous system still wants to protect us. That's those capsules we were talking about, that we want to open those capsules and let the mind-body system go, oh, I survived, I'm okay, I don't have to keep reacting to that anymore. Because that's what PTSD is, right? It's just a natural response that the nervous system has created to protect us, but it doesn't know when to stop, so we have to consciously help it stop. And that's what we're doing when we're processing those. Are you up for people asking you questions about your experience?
Sure.
Okay, awesome. And so we open it up, first of all, with much, much gratitude for Joseph and his vulnerability with us. And so I invite you to share with him your gratitude for his volunteering, as well as any questions you have for him and his experience, or me and what I was doing as on the therapist end. And I can't really see all of you because I'm focused on Joseph right now. But if you want to just go ahead and jump in with a question, we'll take them as they come. I did see some questions popping up. Wasn't focused on them, but I saw some questions happening. Oh, somebody's saying thank you for being vulnerable and sharing with us, Joseph. So somebody asked a question earlier that stood out to me. I'm not seeing it right now. You're getting lots of love in the chat, Joseph, you can look at later. Somebody's asking, how do you help clients be comfortable with silence or just staying? Because I have clients who, after it's too quiet too long, would start to worry about needing to do something else, kind of like when meditations are not talking for a period of time and your mind wanders and gets distracted. That's a great question. And so, Joseph, I noticed I'm going to actually turn this over to you a little bit, since we can talk about it from a real-time witnessing of your experience. Like, there was a time when you were talking, there are times when you were talking through your process, and there's a time when you were just quiet for a while. What was that like for you?
So the times when I was quiet, I was trying to refocus. I was trying to stop myself from running away from it. And I was trying to refocus on putting myself back at that time and trying to like really make a conscious effort to feel what I was feeling in that moment.
Yeah, good. So there were things happening. Um, what the question is addressing also, there are times when I will have clients who are like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do, or my mind is wandering, or, and in training, in brain spotting trainings, we are taught what to do. We are taught about, first of all, I have found, as a consultant who helps other brain spotting therapists become certified, I've learned that it's usually the therapist who's uncomfortable with the silence more than the client. But when it's the client who's uncomfortable, we can just, refer them back. What are you noticing in your body? or we can kind of, when you're doing brain spotting for a while, or maybe you're already very intuitive, you can kind of feel people's distraction, and you can just check in with them. Like, if you go back to the topic we started with, what are you noticing? And anyway, so yeah, there's ways to support
It
a
helped
client in
when
sticking with it.
it helped when you guided me more and you told me to focus on those sensations, the bodily sensations.
Mhm.
I think just in a time when I was feeling discomfort and uncomfortable, your guidance gave me more of a sense of safety and comfort.
Good, good, good. And especially for our first time, that is usual. But when we're in our debriefing time, and I'm doing this for educational purposes. So yes, I'm glad that you felt that comfort. When we're working with clients as therapists, we want to know what the client needs, because there are times, even though we're taught, why am I talking? There are times or situations where more talking is actually more grounding and resourcing for the client, like what you're describing, Joseph, versus other times, if a client's process is just more self-sufficient in the moment, we want to kind of stay out of the way, and we have to learn for each individual because everybody's different. And not even just everybody is different, but every brain spotting session is different, even if it's the same person. So sometimes I don't want my brain spotting therapist to talk, and sometimes I just need that, my mind is going too fast and I need somebody to bring me back to myself. So I feel that. That's good.
So for me, what I heard from that was like that it's for our future, or if we ever have future sessions, then it would be better for me to then sort of guide you on what I need from you.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. Because brain spotting is client led. So, sometimes I can intuit that and sometimes I can't. So absolutely, our clients letting us know what they need is so helpful, just to, I have been brain spotting with a client before. When I was first doing brain spotting and they were quiet, I'm like, oh, they must be going really, really deep. And then,
Mhm.
15 minutes later, they're like, am I doing this right? I don't even know what I'm supposed to be doing here. So it's like, oh yeah, I need to check in way sooner than that. Okay. Silence is good. I'm a meditator. Silence is really good, but I need to be, make sure I'm being attuned with with my client. So that's good.
There's a couple
There's
of questions here for Joseph. Is it okay to ask them?
please.
Joseph, how did your SUDS level um, at the start to end differ with PSB?
I would say like the highest it got was like maybe like a 6.5. And like currently at this moment, I'm feeling like a 2, maybe a 2.5, 3. And it just kind of fluctuated in that range.
A great question and I forgot to ask you at the end because I was wanting to help you out of the brain spotting time, but the automatic assumption is that, and I think eventually our goal is so that the client isn't experiencing any distress over the topic anymore. That's where we're going to, but that doesn't happen in one session all the time. David's experience with the ice skater was unique, and I felt like such a beautiful experience for him to learn about this technique and to discover what he needed to discover about it. But generally in sessions with clients, we have those moments where it's like, ta-da, everything's healed, I'm all better. But my gosh, that is so rare. So it's really more like the Dow Jones Industrial Average. It kind of goes like this, and sometimes, and not too unoften, if I can say it that way, the SUDS level will be stronger or higher at the end of the session, but the client feels okay with that because there's also insights that are going along with it, or there's curiosity around it, like, okay, that really stirred something up. I didn't think that was going to be a big deal, but now it's really a big deal. And now I've got something to think about. And there's another question about, does the processing continue after the actual brain spotting session? And it absolutely does. It's like we went in there and we poked, we poked that capsule. And so now there's all this, you know, all these thoughts, energy that we have tapped into. And so that the mind body system will continue to process that. I tell my clients too that brain spotting is like getting a deep tissue massage, where you go and you get this deep tissue massage and it feels so great right afterwards. And then with, 24 hours later, it feels like you got hit by a truck, because now there's all this lactic acid being released from your muscles. And brain spotting is like that, except we're doing that with nerve cells, right? We're going in there and we're squeezing those capsules. And so there's toxins that get released. We don't know how to measure that yet. We will someday, like we can with the muscles, but the reaction, the physiological reaction is very similar. And I will tell people, if you're into Epsom salt baths, go do that, drink lots of water, rest, dreams may be stronger. If you've been having dreams, you may not have dreams. Like, all these responses are part of the possibilities after a brain spotting session. Some people report headaches, then we may know we need to resource them a little bit more, or take a different approach so that it's not quite so much for the body. Or other people say, I got headaches, but it was fine because it was helpful. I want to do it again. Like, again, every client is unique, every brain body connection and processing style is unique. So we just want to kind of be mindful and ask questions and get lots of feedback from our clients so we know how to support them best. And there is, somebody had asked too about resourcing, and there is very, 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 very many ways in brain spotting to resource. And we always have that up our sleeve. And there's different times to do that. To even start with that. So I wish we had time for all of that today. What other
There's another
questions are you
question for
seeing?
Joseph. Was there any lull in images happening when you were focusing?
Any lull in images?
Yes,
Like as in they were going away?
that's what I'm assuming. Jessica, if you're still there, I don't know if you want to clarify.
Yeah, I was just curious, like when you were trying to focus, like you had shared that there was imaging coming up, so I was wondering how that changed over time.
Yeah, it was there almost the entire time. One, honestly, kind of like one specific image. It was almost like sort of like an out of the body experience where I was seeing myself sitting in the desk. I was seeing myself from a point of view that was kind of like slightly behind me and to the right of me. And I couldn't see my face. I just kind of saw like a little bit of the back and side of my head. And then I could see just like a crowded classroom, beyond that. Nobody's faces. And that particular image, and then the sensations, the whole body sensations, um, were just continuous. The only time that lulled a little bit is when my body started, or when my mind or body, started trying to kind of run from it. And so it was kind of, I guess, maybe like fluttering. And then the time when she had me kind of focus on the sensations that were in my hands and my arms and my forearms, then like when I focused on those sensations in my body, um I I tend to associate imagery and colors when I focus on bodily sensations. So I was the imagery was not there at that point. I was totally focused on the bodily sensations, and a lot of reds and yellows were coming up with that. A couple times, a little bit of purple with the tingling.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. That's such a good overview of all the different kinds of things that can come up and come up in colors and memories and, being able to see yourself outside, that being able to see that elementary school child that you were, that's a good continuation for parts work, being able to do brain spotting with you as the adult talking to that child too. So again, just thinking about incorporating different methodologies with our brain spotting time, and that would be something to continue to work with too. So
That thought did come up a couple times where I thought about trying to talk to myself, but like that thought came up maybe 3 different times where I thought maybe I should try to talk to myself. And like I thought those words, but then I kind of like refocused on the pointer tip or the sensations or the body feeling, and I kind of just ignored that and kind of like put that on the shelf.
yeah, so great. So you already could feel inside that that would have been a good next step. So
I
that's
felt
awesome.
like
So
yeah, I felt like I kind of wanted to, but I wasn't sure how much time we had or when it was gonna end. So and then you didn't give me the guidance or direction to do that. So I felt like maybe I shouldn't, but I did feel like a sensation like I wanted to.
good. That's awesome. There's if if we had had time and if we were working together, that's where I would have gone with that for sure. And I had to bite my tongue to go, no, this we're just doing brain spotting today. We're just doing like we just want that, whatever. So good. I'm glad you felt that. That's awesome. That's awesome. And it just goes to show that wisdom of our clients that we work with, that if we're listening to them and they're safe and comfortable to share what's going on inside because of that relationship, that relational piece, then the client knows how to do this. Just the wisdom of the client's mind body system knows how to heal. And our job is to follow that and to support it and back them up with that. So that's such a beautiful example. Thanks, Joseph. Good. Would you like to be off the hotspot right now, or it looks like you might. Bianca,
I'm
how are we
totally,
doing with questions?
I'm totally fine. It's up to you
Okay,
guys.
cool. Thank you. We got the images. Are we going to this recent question, or what do you have, Bianca? I don't know.
Um,
Oh, oh,
okay, sorry.
There's a question that just came up. It says, is there a way to differentiate between brain spotting responses versus unrelated facial movements like blinking because an eyelash poked the eye versus processing microexpression, just as an example? And yes and no. Like if an eyelash poked the client's eye, they'll probably say something. Everything else is the body responding. Like wherever the body is always reacting to the nervous system. And so everything we see is part of the process. And David would say, a blink isn't just a blink. It's never just a blink. Blinking is the brain processing. Yes, it's keeping the eyes moist, but it's also helping information to keep moving in the brain body connection. So what we want to do when we're doing outside window, for example, where it's therapists watching the reflexes and not getting that feedback from the client, then we're watching those reflexes and maybe there's a blink. So maybe we stop and just see if anything else shows up. And if it doesn't, maybe we'll keep going and maybe we see another blink and we stop, and then we see kind of the rustle or other reflexes start showing up, and David would call that the cascade of reflexes, then we may want to consider that as our eye position, and then we keep going. And it doesn't mean that first blink something wasn't happening there, but when we're looking for an eye position, we're looking for the strongest connection. So when there are more reflexes that we're seeing, we know that there's maybe a stronger connection there. That's our assumption anyway, when we're not getting that feedback from the client and what they're experiencing on the inside. It's great for people who don't know what they're feeling in their bodies, to do that outside window. And I laugh too, because sometimes I've had plenty of clients where I'm moving the pointer across the screen and they're not feeling anything. They're not blinking. Their breath isn't changing. There's nothing physically going on. So I just say, well, this feels like a good spot. Let's do this, try to intuitively as much as I can, but also every eye position is a brain spot. So it doesn't matter. We then can go into that focused mindfulness part of the brain spotting. And anytime, we know mindfulness works, right? So we're just doing it on a specific topic in the session, but we're letting the eyes rest. So the eyes aren't moving all around and the brain's not thinking all around. We're just really focused on something. So we can't go wrong.
There was a question about that too. They noticed that when Joseph was staring at the point, his eyes kind of darted away from the point, and they were wondering, what do you do at that point? Is that okay? Do you redirect them?
Did you notice that, Joseph?
No, but
Yeah.
I mean, it could have been maybe when I was trying to when I was mentally kind of trying to run away from the memory, maybe.
I think you were talking and describing it also. So yeah, I think that was
Mhm.
at that time. And yes, that's perfectly okay, because once we find the eye position, the brain knows where that brain spot is. And so we aren't going to get away from it until we put the pointer down. So a client can even close their eyes, because it's not the pointer that's doing the job, it's the what's happening on the inside that's doing the work. So we can find the eye position. I've had people who won't even look at it. It's like, I just can't look at it. I don't want to look at it. It's mean. I don't like that pointer.
Yeah.
I don't like that stick, and it's like, okay, just know that it's there and you don't have to look at it,
That's kind of
or
how it felt towards the end. When I just was getting really uncomfortable sensations in my body and the discomfort was becoming pretty strong. It got up to about a 6. And I was feeling like, okay, just put it away. Let's let's
yeah.
end this.
Well, because we left that little boy in his classroom all by himself, right? So of course it's like, oh, I want to do something for this little boy. So I understand that. I understand that.
Lynn, what
Yeah.
about facial or body tics?
What about them?
If you have a client with a facial or body twitch, how would you manage that situation with BSP?
I would see if the client can do inside window. So it doesn't matter then what the reflexes are doing. It matters what the client is identifying within themselves, um, and again, even tics are a way of the nervous system trying to process something, right? And so even if it's purely a physical diagnosis, let's pretend it's a purely physical diagnosis, it's the nervous system is still trying to process that physical response, right? So everything is still part of the processing, but when it's hard to differentiate as a therapist, that's when that inside window can be so helpful, because I really default to inside window anyway, because I want my client to define and to identify what's going on the inside versus me doing it from the outside. I do it from the outside when the client just is not aware, but otherwise I want my client to learn themselves, and inside window is the way to do that. So
I just thought of a question actually. I
yeah.
have a I have a friend that has this like long-standing life phobia, and she's really intuitive. She's really she's gone through tons of different therapy modalities. She's got a phobia. It has to do with flying bugs. And she like rationally, she's aware of it. She can make sense of how irrational it is, but still finds herself after all these years and tons of different therapy modalities that she's still dealing with it. I'm curious if this would be a really good modality for her, for somebody with phobias.
Absolutely. And there's other things I would add to that if she were my client. So, but brain spotting would be a really good resourcing um, activity to help her nervous system while thinking about that. And then we would kind of probably do some other types of work there also. Some, yeah,
With my
those other
with my
techniques.
limited knowledge just from this experience, I thought to myself, I wonder if like it would find this spot on her brain where that lies and then like focus in on that.
Yeah, that's the idea, right? Is to move from that
Right.
dysregulation of the fear to regulation of, okay, I can even be aware that I'm afraid of this thing, but I can help my body feel calm around it. And then slowly but surely that rewires the brain, right? Which is what we're working to do, any kind of healing work we're doing. We're rewiring the whole mind body system. So, yeah, great question. And somebody was asking too, I want to address, because this is an important question, I think. Um, couple that are related. Is there any indication that somebody's not ready for brain spotting? And are there any diagnoses that aren't best to do brain spotting with? Again, it's less about the diagnosis and more about the individual. And somebody who is highly anxious, and this is just my own experience, this isn't brain spotting in general, but my own experience, somebody who is highly anxious and needs to control everything is not going to have an easy time letting their mind body system lead, right? And so then we want to do some resourcing more than maybe activation, let's brain spot that anxiety. We want to do some resourcing and just help the mind body system feel safe for a while, and help the client with that regulation without brain spotting, with or without brain spotting, but maybe it needs to be without brain spotting first. And that's kind of answers the second question too about an indicator that somebody's not ready for brain spotting, or if they get too activated, if their body sensations, we call it flooding sometimes, where it's like their internal reactions are just too much for them to handle, and they get outside of their window of tolerance or that window of safety. We know we need to do other things first. Yeah. I'm going to turn this back to you, Joseph. Thank you so much for volunteering for us today.
Oh, could we do one more question?
Sure.
Do
I'll
you
turn
do
it
a
over to you.
dissociative experience scale or other measure prior to BSP?
I look for that during my intake, but I don't do that because the client doesn't always know how to answer that question. Even putting it in the simplest of terms, do you dissociate? The client doesn't always know. So if that's happening during a brain spotting session, because we're so relationally oriented during the session, the client is able to say that, or I am, as a therapist, am able to see that. In brain spotting, we do say if we are going to potentially, which we all are for therapists, possibly be working with somebody with dissociative tendencies, we do want to get training in that so we understand what's happening and we don't have to be afraid of it. We just understand dissociation is a protective mechanism of the brain body system. It's not a disorder. It's a reaction. So we just want to know how to spot it, know how to support that, that grounding that needs to be part of that then too, which there's lots of there's so many different trainings in brain spotting to go deeper and deeper and deeper with these tools, but even knowing the basics and getting trained in other tools and applying them all together is wonderful. So thanks for being here today, everybody. I see all the gratitude coming out, gratitude for you, Joseph. And I would love to thank Kane County Health Department and Bianca and Courtney for supplying us with this opportunity to learn and share together. My information is, my email is chicagobrainspotting@gmail.com. I am always happy to talk brain spotting. My website is centerforenlightenment.com. And on your PowerPoint that is part of the recording, or available with the recording, there's information on, brainspotting.com is the international brain spotting website for trainings and so forth. So you can find them there, and there's some other resources on that PowerPoint as well, that PDF file of the PowerPoint. So anyway, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Lynn.
Thanks for your
Thank you, Lynn.
interest.
This was such a valuable training. It was such a great introduction to brain spotting.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good weekend.